The lie you called kindness. You didn't fall into a toxic relationship. You walked into it with good intentions. You listened, you understood, you forgave, again and again and again, because you believed something most people never question. That kindness is always the right choice. But here's the truth no one tells you. Kindness without boundaries becomes permission. Permission to be ignored. Permission to be controlled. Permission to be slowly erased. At first, it didn't feel wrong. It felt like patience, like maturity, like love. You told yourself they're just going through something. They didn't mean it. I just need to be more understanding. But while you were trying to protect the relationship, who was protecting you? Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and without realizing it, yours began to adapt to something it should have rejected. Not because you're weak, but because you were never taught the difference between being kind and being used. This video is your moment of clarity, because once you see the pattern, you will never experience it the same way again. And more importantly, you will finally understand how to walk away from it without losing yourself in the process. The invisible trap. Toxic relationships don't begin with pain. They begin with comfort. That's what makes them dangerous. There's no obvious moment where you can say, this is where it went wrong, because nothing feels wrong at the beginning. They listen to you, they validate you, they make you feel seen in a way that feels rare. And slowly, something subtle starts to happen. Not control, not yet, confusion. You start questioning small things. Was that comment really disrespectful? Or am I overreacting? Was that silence intentional? Or are they just tired? Was that guilt I felt mine or placed there? Epictetus taught that we are not disturbed by events, but by the meaning we give to them. And this is where the trap is set. Because manipulation today doesn't look like domination. It looks like emotional complexity. It hides behind mixed signals, behind inconsistency, behind moments of warmth followed by distance. Just enough to keep you engaged, never enough to give you clarity. So instead of seeing the situation for what it is, you start analyzing it, overthinking it, justifying it, and without realizing it, you shift from experiencing the relationship to trying to solve it. That's the moment you stop being free, because now you're not relating to the person, you're trying to understand them. And the more you try to understand, the deeper you go, not into truth, but into the illusion that there is something to fix. There isn't. The confusion is not accidental, it's the mechanism, and once you see that clearly, everything begins to change. Emotional debt, the currency of control. It didn't start with manipulation, it started with generosity. They were there for you, they helped you, they gave you attention when you needed it most, and without realizing it, something invisible was created, a balance, not of money, but of emotion. A silent account where every favor, every act of kindness, every moment of support was being recorded, not by you, by them. At first it feels like connection, but over time, it becomes expectation. And then, something shifts. The phrases begin to change. After everything I've done for you, I was there when no one else was. I guess that doesn't matter to you. This is not communication. This is collection. What you thought was kindness was an investment. And now they're asking for the return. Seneca warned that true generosity expects nothing in return, because the moment something is given with expectation, it is no longer a gift. It's a transaction, and you didn't agree to the terms. That's why it feels confusing, because part of you remembers the good, the support, the care, the moments that felt real. And another part of you feels trapped, obligated, guilty, responsible for something you never consciously accepted. This is how emotional debt works. It binds you not through force, but through conscience. You stay not because you want to, but because leaving feels like betrayal. Even when staying feels like self-betrayal. And that's the distortion, because loyalty, when used against you, is no longer a virtue, it's leverage. The moment kindness is used to control your choices, it stops being kindness. It becomes strategy. And the longer you don't recognize this, the more you will try to repay something that was never meant to be owed. But here is the truth that breaks the cycle. You don't owe someone your freedom just because they once gave you attention, and once you truly understand that, the weight begins to lift. The identity erosion loop. They didn't take your identity. You gave it away. Not all at once. Not dramatically, but in small, almost invisible decisions. At first, it felt harmless. You avoided a conflict. You softened your opinion. You let something slide because it wasn't worth the tension, because you wanted peace. But peace, built on self-silence, is not peace. It's suppression. And the more you repeat that pattern, the more something inside you begins to shift. You stop saying what you really think. You stop reacting the way you naturally would. You start calculating everything, not based on truth, but based on their reaction. And this is where the erosion begins, not in what they do, but in how you start adjusting yourself to survive it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes colored by its thoughts. But what he didn't need to say is that it is also shaped by what you tolerate. Every time you ignore your instinct, you weaken your trust in yourself. Every time you stay silent when something feels wrong, you send a message inward. My voice doesn't matter. And over time, you start believing it. This is why toxic relationships are so dangerous. Not because they destroy you instantly, but because they rewrite you slowly. You become more agreeable, more cautious, more distant from who you used to be. Until one day, you don't recognize yourself anymore. And the most painful part is not what they did. It's realizing how far you moved away from your own center just to maintain something that was never stable. This is the loop. You adjust to keep the connection. The adjustment weakens your identity. The weaker your identity, the harder it becomes to leave. Because now you're not just afraid of losing them, you're disconnected from yourself. And here is the turning point. You don't need to find yourself again. You need to stop abandoning yourself. Because the moment you return to alignment, the relationship begins to lose its grip. Not because they changed, but because you did. The kindness illusion. Not all kindness is real. Some of it is engineered. That's the part no one prepares you for, because you were taught to see kindness as proof of character, as a signal of safety, as something that should never be questioned. But in toxic dynamics, kindness is often used with precision, not freely, not consistently, but strategically. You notice it if you pay attention. They are kind when you pull away, warm when you start to detach, attentive right after they hurt you, not before, after. This is not coincidence, it's calibration. They don't give kindness to build something stable. They give it to restore access, to reset your perception, to make you question your own pain. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe things are getting better. But nothing is actually changing. Only your interpretation is. Seneca understood something most people ignore. What appears good is not always good, because value is not in the moment, it's in the pattern. And the pattern here is clear. Kindness is not constant. It is conditional. It appears when needed, disappears when no longer required. This creates a powerful illusion, because your mind doesn't anchor to consistency, it anchors to contrast. The highs feel higher because of the lows. The moments of affection feel intense because they are rare, and that rarity tricks you. It makes you believe those moments are the real version of them. They're not. They are the maintenance mechanism, the way the dynamic keeps you emotionally invested. Because if they were cold all the time, you would leave. So they give you just enough warmth to stay. This is the illusion. You are not experiencing kindness. You are experiencing intermittent relief. And relief is addictive. It doesn't build stability, it builds attachment. But here is the shift that breaks it. Real kindness does not confuse you. It does not make you question your worth. It does not arrive only after damage is done. Real kindness is stable, predictable, free. And the moment you stop labeling inconsistency as love, the illusion collapses. Why you stay? If it hurts, why don't you leave? That question sounds simple, but the answer is not. Because you are not staying for the pain, you are staying for the pattern. Not the bad moments, the good ones, the rare ones, the ones that feel just enough like what you hoped this relationship could be. And that's exactly where the trap is strongest, because what you are experiencing is not love. It's a cycle, a psychological loop that keeps you attached, not through consistency, but through unpredictability. One day they are distant, cold, unavailable, and then suddenly they come back, warm, attentive, present, and in that moment, everything resets. The tension disappears, the doubt fades, the hope returns, and your mind tells you, this is who they really are. But it's not. It's who they are, sometimes. And that sometimes is what keeps you there. Because the human brain is not designed to chase stability. It is wired to chase reward. Especially when that reward is inconsistent, the more unpredictable the affection, the more powerful it becomes. The more you crave it, not because it's healthy, but because it's uncertain. You're not attached to them, you're attached to the possibility of them. To the version that appears, just often enough to keep you from leaving. Epictetus taught that attachment is not caused by things themselves, but by the value we assign to them. And here is the truth. You are assigning value to moments instead of patterns. You remember the apology, but ignore the repetition. You remember the affection, but dismiss the inconsistency. You remember how it can be instead of how it usually is. And this creates emotional confusion, because part of you sees the reality, and another part of you holds on to the potential. And as long as potential feels stronger than reality, you stay. Not because you don't see the truth, but because you keep hoping it will change. But here is the shift that sets you free. A pattern is not an accident. It is a decision repeated over time. And when you stop focusing on isolated moments and start observing the pattern as a whole, you no longer ask, why do I feel this way? You ask, why am I still accepting this? And that question changes everything. The Stoic breakpoint. There is a moment in every toxic dynamic where everything becomes clear, not emotionally, rationally. No more confusion, no more overthinking, no more trying to interpret mixed signals, just a simple realization. This is not going to change. That moment is uncomfortable because it removes the last illusion you were holding on to, hope, not real hope, but the hope that they will become who you need them to be. And this is where most people hesitate, because if they accept the truth, they are forced to act. And action means loss. Loss of the relationship, loss of the idea, loss of the future they imagined. So instead, they delay clarity. They go back to analyzing, to waiting, to giving one more chance. But Stoicism does not allow that escape. Marcus Aurelius built his entire philosophy on one principle: focus only on what you control. And this is where the breakpoint happens, because you finally see you cannot control their behavior. You cannot control their inconsistency. You cannot control how they treat you. But you can control how long you continue to participate. That's the shift, from emotional reaction to conscious decision. You stop asking, why are they like this? And you start asking, why am I still here? And this question is powerful, because it brings the focus back to you, not in blame, in responsibility. You realize that staying is no longer an accident. It's a choice. And that realization is uncomfortable. But it is also liberating, because if it's a choice, it can be changed. This is the Stoic breakpoint, the moment you stop waiting for clarity and start acting from it, not out of anger, not out of impulse, but out of alignment. Because once you see reality clearly, continuing to ignore it becomes self-betrayal. And the Stoic does not betray himself. Not for attachment, not for comfort, not for anyone. Clarity does not make the decision easy, but it makes it inevitable. Silent power, detaching without drama. Most people think leaving requires confrontation. It doesn't. In fact, confrontation is often what keeps you trapped, because toxic dynamics feed on reaction, explanation, emotion, intensity. The more you try to talk it out, the more material they have to pull you back in. So you explain, you justify, you defend your feelings, and somehow you leave the conversation feeling guilty, confused, back where you started. This is why detachment must be silent, not passive, strategic. Epictetus taught that true power is not in controlling others, but in mastering your response. And here is the shift. You stop reacting, not because you don't feel, but because you understand the cost of showing it in the wrong place. You begin to withdraw the things that were keeping the dynamic alive, your emotional availability, your constant explanations, your need to be understood. You speak less, you justify less, you engage less. And something interesting happens. The dynamic starts to break, because manipulation requires participation. It requires your energy, your reactions, your investment. Without that, it weakens. This is silent power. You are still present, but no longer accessible in the same way. You observe more, you react less, you stop trying to fix the situation and start removing yourself from it. And this is where many people feel discomfort, because it feels cold, detached, almost wrong. But it's not. You are not becoming cold. You are becoming clear. There is a difference. Coldness is emotional shutdown. Clarity is emotional discipline. And discipline is what protects you when your emotions would otherwise pull you back. Because the truth is, you don't need one final conversation to leave. You need one final decision. And that decision is not loud. It doesn't need closure. It doesn't need approval. It simply needs to be executed, quietly, consistently, without looking back for validation. Because the moment you stop reacting, you stop being controlled. Boundaries without guilt. You know you need boundaries, but every time you try to set them, something stops you. Not fear, guilt. The feeling that you're being too harsh, too distant, too unfair. So instead of setting the boundary, you soften it. You explain it too much. You apologize for it. You leave space for it to be negotiated. And in doing that, you erase it. Because a boundary that needs approval is not a boundary, it's a request. And requests can be ignored. This is where most people misunderstand the concept. They think boundaries are something you communicate, but boundaries are something you enforce. Seneca believed that self-respect is not declared through words, but demonstrated through action. And this is the shift you need to make. Stop trying to make them understand your boundary. Start deciding what you will no longer tolerate. Silently, firmly, without negotiation. Because the truth is, people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will not validate the moment you create them. They will resist. They will question. They will push back. They may even try to make you feel selfish for changing. And that's where guilt appears. But guilt in this context is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something different, something unfamiliar, something that disrupts a pattern that once benefited them. You are not responsible for their comfort when it costs your stability. You are responsible for your alignment, and alignment requires friction, because when you stop overgiving, when you stop over-explaining, when you stop tolerating, the dynamic shifts, not always peacefully, but necessarily. And here is the most important part. You do not need to convince someone to respect your boundary. You only need to be consistent enough that crossing it has consequences, not emotional reactions, consequences, distance, silence, withdrawal, not as punishment, but as protection. Because boundaries are not about controlling others, they are about defining access to you. And the moment you remove guilt from that process, you stop asking for permission to protect yourself, and you start living in a way that no longer requires defense. The exit strategy, leaving without breaking yourself. Most people leave too late, not physically, emotionally. They stay until they are exhausted, until they are resentful, until they are no longer themselves. And then, when they finally decide to leave, they don't leave with clarity, they leave with damage. And that's why they go back, because they didn't exit with strength, they escaped with emotion. This is where you must be different. Leaving is not an emotional reaction, it's a strategic process, and it begins long before you walk away. Marcus Aurelius practiced preparation before action. And that is exactly what this requires. You don't start by leaving, you start by detaching, quietly, internally. You reduce your emotional dependency. You stop seeking validation. You stop expecting change. You begin to see the situation for what it is, not for what you hoped it could become. And as that clarity grows, your attachment weakens, not forcefully, naturally. Then, you simplify your life. Less explanation, less exposure, less involvement. You create space, not dramatically, deliberately. Because distance is not just physical, it's psychological. And the more space you create, the more perspective you gain. Until one day, the idea of staying feels heavier than the idea of leaving. That's when you know you're ready. And when you leave, you don't argue, you don't try to make them understand. You don't wait for closure, because closure is not something they give you. It's something you decide. You leave with calm, with certainty, with self-respect, and most importantly, without needing them to agree. Because the moment you require their understanding to move forward, you are still tied to them. The real exit is this. You are no longer emotionally available to what once controlled you. And when that happens, leaving is no longer a battle, it's a step. The final confrontation. There is one last truth you have to face. Not about them, about you. Because at some point, this stops being about what they did and becomes about what you are willing to continue allowing. That realization is uncomfortable because it removes the last place to hide. No more blaming, no more waiting, no more hoping things will change on their own. Just a clear question. Am I choosing this, Martin, or am I ready to choose differently? Epictetus taught that freedom begins the moment you take responsibility for your choices, not your past, your choices now. And here is the truth most people resist. You were not too kind. You were not too emotional. You were not too patient. You were simply not taught where those qualities should end, so you extended them beyond the point where they were healthy, beyond the point where they were respected, beyond the point where they started to cost you your identity. But now you see it, clearly. And once you see it, you can't go back to not knowing. This is your turning point, not dramatic, not loud, but decisive. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop participating in something that requires you to shrink. And something shifts, not in them, in you. You feel lighter, clearer, more stable, not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer divided inside. And that is real power. Seneca believed that peace comes not from controlling the world, but from mastering yourself. And that is what you've done. You chose clarity over confusion, self-respect over emotional comfort, truth over attachment. And in doing that, you didn't just leave a toxic relationship, you returned to yourself.